Why are you still here working in Hollywood?
Good question. I'm like, part of me is just like probably ego again, where just like a lot of people either stay or leave, and a lot of people leave, quit. And I'm like, I'm not saying I will quit if I leave because I've been doing this even the first time I left. But I think I made enough connections and network enough down here where I'm like kind of comfortable because like I'm friends with people who are like Asylum and like studios and stuff where I'm just like I know people now. So it's just like I'm a little more established. If I was like newer and if it's been 6 years later and still didn't have the connections and stuff, I would have been like, deuces, I would be back in the Bay Area. But because I've been in the business enough and I have the reviewers and like people know who I am and like even though I'm not financially viable, I have that network here. So that's why I'm still here in LA. But I always tell my friends, don't come to LA. Less competition.
What kind of stories do you still want to tell?
Stories I want to tell. I've always, I don't know, I'm like anything, my mood, it depends on my mood. Because I really like, sometimes I feel like doing comedy, sometimes I feel like doing horror. Right now, like I notice like a trait in my horror stuff right now is a lot of it's like throwback, like nostalgia. Like I don't know why, it's like nostalgia, like Night Nights about a kid who believes monsters are living under his bed or in his closet. Let's see, Check Please was a comedy about, originally it was supposed to be a guy and a girl, but I was like, let's change it around. But both the dudes might be gay, but really the one character isn't. So it's like, but at the end you're like, you're sure he's not or not? It's like I always leave everything open-ended where people are like, wait a minute, could he? Like I always like that. I just like throwing that little thing where I don't like spoon feeding my audience. I want them to watch and like, okay, and then be in the moment like, okay, what did he do after this? Oh, because I'm not into like sequels either. Like that's what sucks because I always try to kill my characters. Oh, that's a top secret. Like every time I do like a horror or genre, like characters die. But there's some stories I still would like to tell. Like there's a couple like one-man shows I definitely want to do about my life, especially about like anxiety and stuff. I do that like that. Like I have some weird phobias, like antique stores and antique furniture. I have a phobia of that.
Really?
Like
What
people like my mom claims it's because my grandmother lost me in an antique store, but I'm just like I just don't like dusty old things. I know that's kind of bad. I don't like hospitals. Midgets and clowns and other ones I can't do. Public restrooms. Like, dude, like I have some weird phobias where people are like, "You're weird, Chad." Yeah, just like there's stuff that I want to try to do. I'm like, it depends on my mood though, because I always find something interesting because people interest me. Like, especially like what was it the other day? I was sitting Starbucks writing, and this guy comes up to me and homeless guy. He definitely has some kind of mental issues, but he's a painter. He's a street painter, and he does brilliant painting. And he just came up and started talking to me. He's like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, his story was so interesting. Like he came from like Carolina, and then like his mom, because he's gay and doesn't like him, and he's older and he's been making art, and like I'm sitting there like that'd be kind of interesting story to tell. And there's this other homeless guy that comes to Starbucks where just random people talk to me sometimes. I just have that face. I don't know. And he's around my age, and he's a comic book artist, but he just got over like a heroin addiction. And like I'm sitting like I'm listening to stories. I'm like, oh, that'd be another interesting story. So there's so many stories that I like listening to. Like there's this one where I work at a pizza place and we got robbed by, I was the one who was at the register at the time, got robbed by a semi-automatic gun. Like this guy was like, like came in, no mask, just pointed the gun in my face. I was like, this would be an interesting story. You know, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I looked like I didn't get shot, but I was sitting there, I'm like, so there's life and music and other movies and like inspire me. So it depends on what I want to do at the time. Once again, being picky and selective.
Yeah, I have that thing too where a lot of people will come up to me and talk to me, and homeless people, and I'll talk to whoever for a while, and it's interesting the stories that people will tell.
Right.
A total stranger.
No, it's just like I sit there and like, and to me it's just like I just have that. It's where it's just like once again, it's like even my day job. People like I used to work with public, where it's just like you hear these different stories. Like there's one time I worked in car sales. This guy who's a salesman, I started laughing like. he was really sketchy, and he would like hook up chicks on test drives. I was just sitting there, and the only reason he got caught is because he got in an accident one time. Oh. It was a chick in the car too, and everything, and like he got T-boned by like a truck, and I was sitting there like he was fine, the girl was fine. Everyone's like the car was total, and people are like, how did this car get total? Weren't you paying attention? Because there was like the road that he got hit. You're like, he's like, I was distracted. I'm like, what are I? But so, but yeah, so it's like there's all these little stories. I sit there and I'm like, and I just write everything. I usually carry a pen and pad with me all the time, and I always like just write notes. Like something comes to me like, okay, this might be, because like I have a bunch of script ideas. Like my whole bedroom, like looks like I don't have OCD, but it looks like because it's cluttered. But I have like notepads on my thing right here. It's just like tons of notepads where I sit down, I'm like, okay, like this one might work with this script, and like, this could be a good idea for a script, or this would be good for a joke. So that's how I do it. It's just like whatever kind of inspires me at that day. So.
Do you think so many people come up to you and tell you stories because they see that you're willing to listen? Because there's so many people in LA, you say hi to them for some. I've given up saying hi. I just have given up because they don't want to talk.
It's twofold because I have another story of that too. It's like, I think it's because I'm genuine, I guess. Like I don't have an ulterior motive or agenda. Like where I'm like, I just like listening to people. Like when they came and they tell me, I actually listen. I'm like, that's actually interesting. Because a lot of people like talking about themselves. Like, sure. I'm talking about like this self-absorbed ego. It's like, oh my God, like I am an actress and I'm at Starbucks. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, but there's other people that are outside the business. Like once again, it goes back to the whole LA is a bubble where they don't think anything exists outside of LA. And that's one thing, that's why I always like getting out of LA, because like, there's more to life than LA. It's like there's more to life than show business. Like people don't get that. It's like, I gotta go yoga and Pilates. And I'm like, it's like, okay, what else you do? What's like, do you have a family? Like a cat at least or some cheese? It's just like, but once again, like where people like don't want to confront, like for example, I was walking to Starbucks the other day and this really beautiful chick was like her car was on the side of the road. It was flat. And part of me wanted to go and help her, like, but then I'm going to like, okay, hashtag me too. She'd probably be like, why aren't you helping me? Because it's happened before.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there, I'm like,
God.
I'm sitting there, like, because like, I kid you not, like, I opened a door one time for this woman. He's like, you think because you're a white male, that I'm just like, I was like, yo, you're white, yo. I'm like, what the hell is your malfunction? I'm like, you're coming to Starbucks. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, this would you open the door for?
Yeah.
I would be so happy.
I was just like, I'm sitting there like, she's like, you're what's wrong with society? You're white, privileged male. I'm like, last time I checked, we have the same tone of skin. And okay. And so it's just like, I was like, wow. So I don't even tempt. I saw the chick need help. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to try. Screw it. Just
yeah.
Like, walking. She was already eyeballing me weird. And I was just like, nah, whatever. Because I was just like, and it wasn't in a bad area either. So I was just sitting there like, nah, she's going to probably be like, nah, I don't need help. I'm like, all right, cool. Deuces. But yeah, it's just like the people there are just like, I sit there. And that's why I think I like people who are less fortunate, because like that could be me. I think like that's how I think my outlook is. Like I grew up lower middle class in a very diverse neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I say diverse because I don't want to scare my white audience. But it's like, it's weird. It's hard to explain. It's like if you're willing to listen, like I like listening to that. I'm more interested in that, more life. That's why I want to do a podcast where I interview people like that, because that's, to me, is interesting. That's why I saw like people like Ira Glass and stuff. They interview and talk to people who are unique and different. Or it's like, it's not the same thing. It's like, so celebrity A was like wearing something, and then celebrity B, I'm like, really? It's like, once again, there's more to life than show business in LA, and people don't get that. And that's the one thing that perturbs me a little bit, where I just sit there and I was like, I'm going to yoga. Do you go to gym? I'm like, no, I'm just going to eat tacos and a Slurpee. So like, I just make movies. So that's how I look at it.